When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Black Hollow Dam. User: Journo1xbeat. Posted April 14th, 1998.
I first heard about Black Hollow when I was a kid. The kind of half-whispered story that older cousins would tell at night just to watch us squirm. By the time I was old enough to start digging into it for myself, I thought I'd find nothing more than a bunch of rural ghost tales. But what I didn't expect were the paper trails, the army files, and the people who, even decades later, still won't talk above a hush when the subject comes up. The official record is clean. Spring of 1952, the Army Corps of Engineers broke ground on what was supposed to be just another hydroelectric dam in Tennessee. They called it Black Hollow, a tidy name for a tidy project: flood control, cheap electricity, a little federal pride. That's what the newspaper said. I've spent enough nights with microfilm to know the local coverage was straight boilerplate. Progress, jobs, modernity. But tucked in between the headlines, you start to see the cracks. Workers complained about the tunnels echoing back words they hadn't spoken yet. Not just your usual hello, hello bouncing off the rock, but full sentences, jokes, arguments, prayers, coming back hours later. One guy, a foreman named Harlan, told a Franklin Herald reporter that he swore he heard his own voice call his name when no one else was down there. The reporter printed half of it, but then cut the rest. I know because I tracked down the raw notes in an archive box. Then came the cave-in. 17 men gone in less than a minute, buried alive. The Army called it unstable shale layers, water seepage, and accident. But one survivor swore he'd heard a sound like a church organ reverberating through the stone before the collapse. He described it as the ground itself humming. That quote never saw print. By then, the Corps had muscled into full control. That's the moment the story shifts. From then on, Black Hollow stopped being a civic project and became something else. They brought in geologists, sure, but also men with clipboards who weren't asking about rock samples. They ran wires, hung microphones, told the workers to keep their mouths shut, and in '52, the blueprints changed. New barriers, new walls, reinforced concrete poured into places that had nothing to do with water flow. By the time they closed the gates in '56, the whole valley was underwater. Farms bulldozed, houses torched, even the Black Hollow churchyard supposedly dug up and carted away. Only I've heard more than one old-timer say they never moved all the graves. Some of those coffins are still down there, 90 feet below, resting in the dark. That reservoir has a reputation. Fishermen talk about hearing their names whispered out across the water. A veteran named Crawford swore he heard his late wife calling him from below the surface. He sold his boat a week later and never set foot on that lake again. I talked to a ranger who said he once heard hymns drifting up from the spillway. Soft at first, then so loud he swore the concrete under his boots was shaking. He asked me not to print his name. I've driven out there myself. Did it in '94, in fact. Kudzu crawling over the guardrails, the road crumbling, but the dam is still standing, squat and ugly. I didn't make it far. A soldier stopped me before I could get close, rifle slung across his chest like we were in the middle of a war zone. He told me the area was off limits. I asked him why, and he just smiled that thin little smile soldiers have when they know something you don't. Some things don't change, he said. That phrase stuck with me. Some things don't change. I started digging again, and that's when I found the TVA inspector's notes from '71. Buried in the margins of an otherwise dull engineering report were 2 lines. Heard the organ again. Deep vibrations, not mechanical. And below that was recommend further sealing or risk contamination. Contamination. That word rattled me. He wasn't talking about water seeping through cracks. He meant something else, something they were trying to keep in. By the '80s, divers were coming back from turbine inspections, white-faced and silent. One of them, just one, confessed that he'd seen a light flickering in the silt below, like a window glowing in a house that should have been gone. Another claimed he'd seen the steeple of the old church still standing down there, even though everyone knows it was dismantled before the valley was flooded. He left the job and moved 3 states away. I tracked him down once, and he hung up the phone the second I said Black Hollow. And then there was the drought of '84. The water dropped so low that parts of the old valley came back up out of the mud. Folks swarmed to see it, poking through fence posts and stone foundations. A teenager claimed he found a headstone split down the middle, the inscription smoothed clean as if polished from beneath. The Corps sent bulldozers the next day, flattened everything, and declared the place unsafe. I've pieced this together over the years. A scrap here, a rumor there. Enough to know that the story told at campfires, the one about the dam sealing away something that never should have been disturbed, isn't just smoke. Some say it's the dead, angry at being drowned. Others think it's older than that. I don't know which version I believe, but I do know the Army still keeps a guard shack lit at night for a dam that should have been just another TVA project. And here's the thing that keeps me up most of all. A friend of mine who worked maintenance at a TVA office swore he found a reel-to-reel in the archives unlabeled, and when he played it out of curiosity, he saw first a steady rush of water with turbines humming, then voices. A hymn, maybe. Except it was wrong, warped like it was being sung backward, slow and mournful. It grew louder and louder until the tape squealed and he cut it off. He told me he didn't sleep right for a week. I don't know if that tape is still in a box somewhere forgotten or if someone locked it away with all the other things that don't fit. What I do know is that Black Hollow Dam is still there, still holding back a reservoir full of ghosts, memories, or maybe something worse. And if you camp on the shore on a quiet night, you might hear it too. The voices rolling across the black water, singing hymns nobody taught them. Sometimes they call out names, and sometimes those names are yours.
Subject: The Lights at Minot. User: MinotSpotX. Posted June 11th, 1999.
It was January 21st, 1968. Dead winter in North Dakota, the kind of cold that cuts through steel and settles into bone. A B-52 Stratofortress lifted off from Minot Air Force Base at 4:01 in the morning, loaded with 4 hydrogen bombs. That was the policy at the time. Airborne alert, they called it. Always keep the birds in the sky, ready to deliver the end of the world at a moment's notice. You know, just in case. This particular mission was codenamed Chrome Dome, part of a program that had planes with live nukes circling the Arctic night and day. The public didn't know about it then, and most folks still don't care now, but when you say the words Minot in 1968 to someone who was there, you'll see a flicker in their eye. They'll know exactly what you mean. They'll know about the crash. What they probably won't tell you about are the lights. The official story is neat and tidy, like they always try to make it. At 4:31 a.m., roughly half an hour into the flight, the bomber suffered a cabin fire. Plastic insulation burned, smoke filled the cockpit, and the pilot ordered an emergency descent. Somewhere during the chaos, the plane began shedding pieces, a wing broke away, and the bomber tore itself apart in the dark. 6 men ejected into the icy air. 3 survived, and 1 more went down with the wreckage. 4 thermonuclear weapons scattered across the farmland like toys out of a broken box. The Air Force locked down the whole region, scouring fields with soldiers and Geiger counters until they found them all, and that's supposed to be it. A tragedy, but contained. A reminder that even the most powerful machine on Earth can come apart at the seams when the smallest thing goes wrong. But when you start talking to the people who live under the frozen sky, the edges fray fast. You hear other things, stranger things. You hear about lights. One of the crewmen, his name doesn't matter because the record erased it, told his rescuers that he'd seen glowing beacons in the clouds, pacing the bomber for nearly an hour before the fire. Not starlight, not weather balloons, but defined shapes, moving in tandem, holding formation like hunters flanking their prey. His statement made it into an early report, and then it vanished. Official cause: crew fatigue, compounded by smoke inhalation. The Air Force decided his memory couldn't be trusted. His testimony was stricken, sealed, filed away under the polite category of irrelevant. But word got out. It always does. Men talk in bars. Farmers talk over fence lines. Wives overhear things they're not supposed to. And before long, people across Ward County were whispering about what had really been up there. There's a farmer named Leonard who swears he saw the whole thing. He lived a couple miles from the crash site and was up before dawn to check on a calving cow. He told anyone who'd listen that 3 lights came out of the north, hovering low and bright, like lanterns swinging over the fields. He said they moved with the B-52 close enough that he thought they'd collide. He ran inside to fetch his binoculars, but by the time he got back, fire was trailing from the bomber's wing and the lights were gone, vanished like smoke. Leonard died in the 80s, still telling that story, even when it cost him friends. Then there were the sheriff's deputies, a pair of them that had been patrolling Highway 83, killing time in their cruiser with the heater running when they spotted an object crossing the road above them. They figured it was a plane at first, except it didn't sound like one. No engine roar, no jet whistle, just silence and light. It glided over the frozen fields, smooth as a shadow, then shot skyward like it had been pulled on a string. Minutes later, they saw the horizon bloom red with fire. They never put their names in the paper, but locals knew who they were, and they knew those men weren't liars. What doesn't fit, and this is the part that makes your skin itch, is that these stories weren't told after the crash. They were told before. The Air Force was already getting calls about strange lights in the days leading up to January 21st. Farmers said their cattle were restless. One rancher claimed a calf had been born with its eyes sealed shut and its legs bent the wrong way. There were even rumors from base personnel themselves, men assigned to the missile fields north of Minot who said their radios crackled with voices that didn't belong to anyone on their frequency. Some of those men said they saw hovering lights too, though you won't find a single mention of that in any declassified file. The paper trail ends where the weirdness begins. Doesn't it always? The Air Force wrapped the incident up in a bow. A mechanic's rag left where it shouldn't have been, a short circuit, an electrical fire. Human error, that's all, and maybe that's true. Planes are complicated beasts, and a B-52 is no exception, but even if you believe every line of the official story, there's still a problem. The surviving crewmen never agreed on where the fire started. 2 swore it came from behind the navigator's panel. Another insisted it came from beneath the floor. One even claimed he saw flames dancing around the overhead hatch, a place with no wiring at all. Fire doesn't move like that. Not unless it's being guided. Now, you won't find the name UFO in any of the reports. Too toxic, too ridiculous. This was the Cold War, after all, and the idea that a billion-dollar machine carrying the power to end civilization could be toyed with by something wasn't just unacceptable, it was unthinkable. So, they didn't think it. They buried it. They called it fatigue. Confusion, panic. They said the men didn't know what they saw. Maybe that's the easiest way to explain it, but I can't help thinking about that farmer, Leonard, standing in the snow with his binoculars while his cow labored in the barn. I can't help thinking about those deputies sitting in their cruiser watching a silent object drift overhead. I can't help thinking about the crewman whose testimony was cut out like a cancer. Maybe he was delirious, maybe he was mistaken, or maybe he wasn't. There's one more detail. It's small, but it sticks. When they recovered the bombs from the crash, one of them was missing its parachute harness. That's the rigging that keeps a nuke from shattering when it hits the ground. The Air Force found it lying half a mile away, folded neat as laundry. Official word, the harness detached midair. Case closed, but the harness was intact. No scorch marks, no broken buckles, nothing to suggest it had ripped loose at 500 miles an hour, just folded fabric lying in the snow like somebody had set it down on purpose. That never made the papers, but men talk. The recovery crew drank hard that night, and some of them never went back to the base again. So, here's what we've got. A bomber tearing itself apart over the Dakota Plains. A handful of survivors with fractured memories, and a countryside full of witnesses telling stories that don't match the official line. Lights pacing the plain. Objects hovering over patrol cars, harnesses folded in snow. It doesn't fit, and because it doesn't fit, it got erased. The lights at Minot became nothing more than another Cold War accident tucked away on page 17 of the Minot Daily News. Human error. Tragedy, but contained. That's all the story's supposed to be. Except, if you drive out there now, you'll find something different. The crash site is long cleaned up, the debris hauled away, the earth plowed under and replanted, but locals will tell you that on certain winter nights, when the air is so cold it burns your lungs, you can still see the lights. 3 of them. Moving together, drifting over the fields. Some say they're nothing but reflections, tricks of atmosphere, headlights from trucks a mile away. Others don't bother with explanations. They just shake their heads, cross themselves, and tell you not to go looking. Because whatever was up there on January 21st, 1968, it wasn't meant to be seen, and if it was watching then, who's to say it isn't watching still?
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.